All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to get it kicked off here. This meeting is the sub-project from SIG VMware and the cloud provider for the vSphere cloud provider. And the purpose of today, so if you do not want to be recorded, please do leave now. Otherwise, the rest of the meeting is recorded and is published on YouTube. So give everybody a second to leave if you want to. Okay, nobody left, so let's kick off the meeting. So today we've got an agenda which is really here to provide some updates to the community on status and also look for participation and folks to sign up to help join the initiative and help in certain areas. I'm going to share off the meeting notes doc so that we can go through it and see where we're at. I think everybody sees that now. We good?
Good.
Good. Okay. So let's roll through it. So the first thing on the, and I think the important context here as well is that we're marching towards a release for the Alpha Cloud Controller Manager and the vSphere Cloud Provider at the end of September. So that's about 2 weeks away that we're planning to have the very first public alpha release of this. So what we see here in terms of the issues are things that are going to help support that release. So pretty exciting. So first thing on the list, we've got end user documentation, which is listed as GitHub issue number 41. Let me open this up so we can take a peek. I think this is where we were talking about getting the existing documentation from the cloud provider, which is in tree right now, and making sure that it's updated and fixed and makes sense for what the new cloud provider functionality is. The external cloud provider functionality is going to be. Does anybody have any status on this one? Nope, that's fine. So I think we'll wait until Fabio returns, and I think we need to look for someone to step up and help us make this documentation update happen, because I don't think that we can do a release of this until we have properly documented what this new thing is. So we'll leave this as an open item. Travis, can you update that line item and say looking for contributor or help wanted? And I think I can go in here and say, I can say help wanted, or what's the, do you guys know what the tag is?
We should be able to, isn't one of the tags that's
It's called help wanted.
Like that?
Space, I think the space between help and try that.
Like that? It's probably gonna tell me I have no rights to do that, but we'll see. Okay, we're coming back to it. We'll see what to the process. Okay, moving on to the next one. So update on conformance tests. So number 38. So it looks like this has been assigned to both Andrew and Hui. Can I get one of you guys to give us an update on where we're at with this?
Sure. I'll give an update on the what is the job status today, and Andrew going to help jumping on how the job going to be triggered by Traverse CI. As of today, as of last night, I'm able to run the container to run from creating the cluster and config CCM and launch conformance test to finish, and everything is running right now. I believe it's consistent for now, and I put a link there saying this not be finalized means there could be some improvements we made, but this is an example of the container image that we can do the job. And what's remaining is we need to also finalize the location of the test grid so that we can upload test results there, and also while the Travis CI to trigger this job.
Yeah. So thank you, Hui. So that's great work, Hui. And we do have a note out to the person in charge of provisioning access to the shared VMware Google bucket. She responded yesterday, and late in the afternoon, so I'm going to take care of that this morning. So we'll get moving on that. As far as the workflow that we mentioned, we refer to it as the signal. The end goal, of course, is tight integration with Prowl. But for the time being, and especially because this is a dedicated repository to which we can add hooks, we're going to use Travis CI to provide the build signal. And was somebody have a question?
Nope.
Okay, sorry. And so what that means is that for every merge to master, every commit to master, it will kick off this image, and it will be scheduled on a public, with credentialed VMC, a VMware Cloud and AWS endpoint, using the VMC vSphere instance as the control plane, against which the Kubernetes cluster is stood up, and then the out-of-tree cloud provider is configured, and then the tests are run. That process is there on a fork, but we also need to make it work nightly against head Kubernetes as well as tagged versions of Kubernetes. Right now, I've been thinking about how to do that. You can set up cron jobs in Travis CI, and we would rather do that than have to have a system that we maintain. The only problem is that you're limited to what you can do with a cron job in terms of configuration. So what's likely going to happen is we'll need to create branches on the cloud provider that exist for no other purpose than to be a signal that this should operate against a particular version of Kubernetes. The branches may not even have any actual cloud provider code in them. Think of them like GH pages. Because you can set up cron jobs to run against specific branches, and that information will come through in the job. That's something I intend to talk about with Hui and Fabio this week and when he gets back.
Okay, sounds good. Can we get an updated comment in here that says where you guys are at? I think we put a note in the meeting notes, but it sounds like you just have number 5 left. And then can we just make sure that it's clear, like what the expectation is, like when you guys think you'll have that ready to go?
Yes, I will get that done. I'll get that updated by the end of the week. Can you please do me a favor? I know I'm already assigned, but can you just do like a bump so I get it in an email?
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, good. Anybody have any other comments on that one? Is that clear what's going on?
I did wonder if anyone has any opposition to having basically branches out there for no other purpose than to act as signal. It's probably not the ideal situation, but I don't know necessarily of a better way to do it right now.
What would be the like? When would we get rid of those? Like, when would we change our signal? Like, is there a short?
Yeah. Can I share my screen? Can I show you what I?
Sure. Let me stop my share.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me show you what I mean here. Here we go. So this is cron jobs for another project to which I have access called Rexray. And you can see that all you can do is add jobs against a branch, particular intervals and particular options. What comes through when you run a Travis cron job is the fact that it is a cron job and the branch against which it's run. So you ask, when will we get rid of that? I'm going to stop sharing. I just wanted to show people that.
Mm-hmm.
You asked when we would get rid of that. So the end goal is to have Prowl provide the signal. The thing is that Prowl has to kick a job off somewhere. They could do it today with Hui's image, and that was our original intent, except there was pushback from Google to support Docker and Docker as a solution to do any type of tests. They already are, when you have a Prowl job running on the singular Prowl instance, it's already running in a container, and they want to avoid using Docker and Docker. So they basically would have to, signal something else. We don't have that something else yet. Eventually what that will be is a public Kubernetes endpoint where they could just schedule a pod spec that includes Hui's image, and then it runs just like it would with Travis, right? It just basically kicks off an async operation. And then we don't need Travis anymore.
What does everybody think? Do we think, like in the short term, that that's a problem to use branches to help us for signaling?
What my understanding is, we can simply set up a cron job even without Travis CI if we can. I mean, just run lightly and get the master head.
Yeah, we can. I think I mentioned I don't want to be responsible for maintaining that infrastructure and making sure that job is running. I'd rather defer that to somebody else. Something just occurred to me, and I guess I was being dumb. We can just have a single cron job that kicks off multiple builds. So it could just run against master, detect that it's cron. And
Yeah.
every time I say cron, I think of Conan and Crom. It's the riddle of steel, the riddle of builds, and it will just kick off all of the configured jobs. So yeah, there's no reason to have multiple branches. I don't know why I said that. Just ignore it.
Okay. Good.
Okay, good.
Everybody good there? All right, thank you. Great update. Moving on to the next one. Porting zone support from in-tree to out-of-tree. So we've got Doug signed up to give us an update here. What's going on, Doug?
Yeah, so I'll give an update on the in-tree stuff since most of it applies to the external provider. I think last time we had met was the current status was Jai Tong had a PR open in-tree that implemented what we called phase 1. And that included, integrating the new Go vMommy tags API and mapping hosts tags that were at the host system level and reporting them as Kubernetes zones. So since then, we added support in Go vMommy and the simulator for vAPI and this new tags API. And then we were able to use that to implement tests for the Kubernetes zones implementation. And then moved on to what we called phase 2, which is basically expanding from that limitation of being able to tag the host system and enabling you to tag at any level in the hierarchy. So it could still be the host system, or it could be a cluster, virtual data center, or at inventory folder, anywhere in between, which would include the root folder of your vCenter. So you might have multiple virtual data centers, but if you consider the vCenter instance itself a zone, then the root folder could be used in that case. So one of the issues with the current implementation in tree is that in order to look up those tags, all of the nodes now need vSphere credentials. We have an issue open for implementing another API in Go vMommy called namespace DB. And while there is a DB involved, the more interesting part for us was the event mechanism that is basically gives you a guest RPC mechanism. And there's ways to do that with the current API, but it's just a little bit clunky. And so in the course of looking at that, I also looked at the other APIs that Michael Gash, I don't know if he mentioned in this issue. Can you scroll down there? Yeah, so these two APIs. So the API that's implemented in tree is just get zones. There's no context parameters. So it's assumed that get zones is for the current node that you're running on. But both of these get node by provider and node name were added for the external CCM support. So they're always called at the by the cloud controller and not by the nodes themselves. And both of these have the context of an ID and a node name. So what that means is the cloud controller is the only place we'll need credentials to look up the tags for all of the nodes. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing. So I think instead of trying to push forward with the in-tree guest RPC path that we were talking about, that it's a good time to just move on to building this out in the external provider.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to figure out where we're going with this. So the decision is like, we've got this new feature functionality, we want to expand zone support, and the choice is whether we focus on the in-tree provider or we focus on the external provider. And for this meeting, I don't think we need to really think about that in-tree and what we're going to do or what we aren't going to do. But for this meeting, we're focused on, what is the external provider going to look like? So what is, what's the goal for this issue? I know that this was a stretch goal. Are we going to have like-for-like functionality of what we had on the in-tree? Are we going to go for, the V2 or this updated functionality that you were just talking about? Like, what are we going to try and do here?
So functionally, the out of tree will be the same, but it has the advantage of not requiring credentials in each node's configuration file.
Okay.
I wanted to interject, Doug, that we didn't say it in the testing thing, but we're also implementing conformance testing for in-tree. So if we make any changes for that, at least we can feel confident about it.
Yeah.
Cool. And the conformance tests include the cloud controller tests. Is that the alignment there?
I mean, it should. Anything, I have to double check, but I know I've seen errors in the conformance test, like, unable to do certain things because our provider doesn't support it.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're still on track then for this issue. We want to do like-for-like functionality plus this enhancement that we don't need to distribute credentials anymore to the nodes. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we can skip the namespace DB API for now. There's potentially other use cases for it, but I don't think we'll need it here. Another open issue that I'm currently working on is by adding the new tags API. We haven't added SSO support to that yet, so currently requires username password authentication. And we just added support for vSphere SSO and 111, and that's also in the external provider. So I'd like to get that figured out first, and then actually porting this to the external provider, I think, should be pretty straightforward.
Okay. I'm going to bump you on this to add an update based on what you said today for what our plan is, because I don't know that it's clear in here exactly what we're going to deliver for this release coming up. Can you update the status on that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think I'm going to create a feature for GitHub like Reddit has called Remind Me. You can just do like a /remind-me 3 days and it'll send you an email or something.
That would be kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Actually, Tide would do that. Yeah, I'm going to check that out.
All right, thanks for writing in the notes there. Anybody have any questions on that one? Sounds clear to me. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next one. So next on deck is Travis. Do we not have a GitHub issue created for the CSI driver yet in Cloud Provider?
Not in the Cloud Provider repo. I was just noticing that, so that's why I put in the first bullet there that I'll add that this week. We have a bunch of internal issues, but nothing in that particular repo. So I will add that, and as part of that effort, one of the things that's going on there is that since all of the storage development right now will happen inside of the vSphere Cloud Provider repo as well, any still valid storage issues that are contained in the VMware Kubernetes fork are going to be moved to here. And then another issue that Fabio has asked me to file that we kind of want to raise as a broader issue, but a longer term issue, is whether or not that's the right place for the CSI storage code being in a Kubernetes specific repo, since it is intended to be container orchestrator agnostic. But we're not going to fight that battle today, we'll keep that there, but file an issue just to keep it, keep people aware of it. So the storage effort here is really kicking off in earnest this week. I think an important thing to point out is that, as you mentioned, Clint, we're targeting an alpha for the cloud provider at the end of this month. But it's important to note that will not include a storage driver. CSI won't be there because we're really just starting now, which means that there is limited functionality with that out of tree provider. So, your choices there are to basically use another CSI driver, something like NFS or something local, but it does kind of limit its usefulness when it comes to storage.
So yes, I think maybe a summary of this is that the externalized cloud provider becomes more useful when we hit beta or when we hit the release for KubeCon at the end of the year, the next release, because that's where we have a functioning CSI driver as well. So if you're trying to go from an in-tree provider to the out-of-tree provider, the like-for-like functionality is only provided once we have the CSI driver, because you can't have our externalized cloud provider online at the same time as the internal one, if I'm not mistaken. Does anyone know if that's accurate or not?
Yeah, that's correct. Because you have to tell Kubernetes that you're using external cloud providers, and that disables the internal ones.
Yeah, so does that, I learned the other day that when you do that, you only enable the external ones on the kubelet. So what happens if you enable Kube API server with the internal one, but you've got the kubelet using external? I mean, because they're different processes. So presumably you could start them up like that. Do they know to error out and say you've got multiple configs that are invalid?
The cloud provider documents clearly say it's not supported in that way. You cannot config both at the same time.
But I think you probably actually can. The reason I say
the
reason I say this is because the process for configuring the outer tree is specific to the kubelet, as you told me, Hui. So somebody could still have the old one set up on multiple API servers, multiple, I think, controller manager or scheduler, one of the two uses it as well, and not realize they have to go disable all of those. I was just wondering, is there any way that the outer tree could detect that the API server and controller manager is actually configured for entry and print out some type of error to let people know?
I personally have no idea.
I actually tried it. It's not going to working. Just all the nodes, all the work nodes going to be tainted as unschedulable. Means you cannot schedule any part to all the work nodes if you configure it that way. Until you have a right CCM config, out of tree CCM config, talk to the API server, and you can. It's going to automatically untaint them. Otherwise, you basically got a cluster saying all the work nodes cannot schedule part anymore.
If you've got the API server configured for entry and you're using the kubelet out of tree, somehow the API server knows that those kubelets are unusable?
No, it's saying if you configure the Kubernetes to external, it's going to taint itself. So no pod can be scheduled there until the right CCM be configured and untaint them. So actually, I think API server basically don't know.
That's what I'm saying. The API server today, and I think controller manager, if you're using the cloud provider, you configure the entry one there as well. But without a tree, it's only on the kubelet. So I'm just kind of curious what happens if you don't change your API server and controller manager configurations, go start up a new kubelet that's external. What happens? I mean, presumably, actually, maybe it doesn't even matter, because the point is that the kubelet doesn't require the ones on the outer tree doesn't require the API server one anymore.
So let me get back to Travis, because I think he's got one more point.
Yeah, sorry.
If we wanted to close on that, we can chat about it some more. Is that fair?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. It was a tangent. Don't just ignore it.
Okay. Travis, I think you had more to cover. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say, as part of this driver, the intent right now is to focus on an implementation using the first class disk API, which people abbreviate FCD. And so this is a change from what's in Tree right now, which uses the virtual disk manager. And so this will help solve some problems related to detaching disks and when to delete them versus when nodes go away or when VMs go away. But this does introduce a new minimum level of vSphere, which would be 6.5. Along with this work, it means some enhancements are necessary to Go vMommy because the first class disk support isn't there. So we need to add that into those Go bindings, and along with it, add support for FCD to VCSym for our testing purposes.
And so I think generally, we want to make sure that we cover some of the issues that have come up with existing cloud provider storage support. Make sure that we address those with this new driver. But I think what we're also calling out here is that there's probably going to be a migration story work, or at least we need to make it clear what the migration path is, whether there is one or not between the two, because this is a pretty major change architecturally or functionally from how the existing driver's been made. I think we should probably just add that as a note that the migration path is questionable, right? It's a little bit unknown right now what that's going to be to go from the existing entry to the external, just because of this, if you want to use FCD.
Yeah, and I mean, another, an existing issue that we've seen from customers is if they have multiple vCenters running inside of one Kubernetes cluster, and there isn't shared storage, like one vSAN deployment across multiple vCenters. There's no way in the driver today to say, these hosts access this vCenter and these hosts access a different vCenter. So there are some architectural changes that we'll need to make to support things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then regarding CSI, if anyone's interested in that meeting to play a part in it, do we have that set up yet? Or is is this going to be a sub project of the VMware SIG, or have we figured that out yet?
Yeah, I mean, since it's inside of the VMware or the vSphere cloud provider, it does fall under the VMware SIG. I should talk to Fabio to formalize that and see if it is actually, if it needs to be a separate sub-project, which I'm not sure that it does since it's in that repo. And
Steve, I hear you on the call, or is he on the call? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't know if it's part of the cloud provider. You can argue that it actually belongs with the cloud provider.
Yeah.
If that's how we're putting it. Is there any hope at all that this would be used outside Kubernetes altogether, like with Mesosphere, which would clue you in that maybe it doesn't belong there? But
no, not for our plans. I think that we're focusing on a CSI plugin that is meant to operate with Kubernetes.
But yeah, the project is sensitive to these relationships. I know because I finally got the charter in after months of back and forth with steering committee reviewers. So that's the charter for the VMware SIG. And one of the touchiest issues, well, in addition to us being, quote, too commercial, they didn't like us advertising a list of vSphere features claiming we were promoting it, or at least some members thought that. Yeah. But the other thing is that when we intersect with other SIGs, which the cloud provider does, and which actually I think CSI potentially overlaps with the storage SIG, they are insisting that we call that out. And then what got through the charter was we made a statement that this project is co-owned with XSIG. And I think that I put in there that the vSphere CSI is co-owned with the storage SIG. Now, beyond that statement, I don't think anybody's paying a lot of attention to it. And I've missed storage SIG meetings for about a month now. So I don't know whether they've appointed a repository for these CSI plugins to live in.
Yep.
Last I touched base, they didn't even want it because the people over in the storage SIG were contending that since it's orchestrator agnostic, we should not own the code.
Yeah.
That was their attitude.
And so what has happened there is there's a KEP that is owned by SIG cloud provider, and right now it dictates that the CSI code should be in the cloud provider repo. And like I said, we're going to bring it up, file an issue against that, because I mean, my personal opinion is that's not the right way to do it, but we'll follow the guidance as it stands today.
Yeah, my attitude would be, if it's a vector to just get the darn thing done, I don't much care. Let's just get it done. And if the low friction way is to go along with that rather than argue with them, that would be, I don't know, if I have a vote, that's my vote.
Okay. SIG storage, from what I've seen there, I mean, it's an external binary. It's out of their control.
Yeah, I don't think SIG storage has an interest in claiming it. So no. But if the cloud provider does, let them have it.
But what they are doing is SIG storage would like to track it. So they want to know what the plugins are, what their state is. And so there is a line item that SIG storage tracks of how's the vSphere plugin coming. And the answer may be not at all, but like, what is the status? And so
did we put a line item in there? Obviously for 112, we should be like non-existent, I guess, or...
We do have a line item being tracked by the storage SIG for our CSI driver, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay, as long as I got the mic, the VMware SIG meeting is tomorrow. There's no point in going over this level of detail, but if somebody here could volunteer to take an agenda slot to just summarize what went down in this meeting, that'd be great, like 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure, I can do that.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
I put a link in the chat.
Andrew, do you want to do it?
In there.
No, you spoke up, man.
No,
I can grab that. That's fine.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. Andrew's on the hook.
Steve, would you do me a huge favor and send me a reminder?
Yeah.
I have my reminders app up. I'll just add it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll hit you on Slack.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But yeah, in the doc, if you can it'd be great if whatever you're going to put as your summary, if you just type it into the agenda, that way.
Oh yeah,
if you get hit by a bus and you don't show up, somebody else can just read it.
Oh, I was, but that was so. now I'm not going to, in case that bus does hit me. I'm gonna leave it on the hook. All
right, excellent. So, does anybody have any questions or anything else they want to bring up for this meeting? All right, let's make it a wrap. That was a great update. Looking forward to actually just about 2 weeks out to see our first release of the CCM. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.